Hi, my name is Kate Orff. I'm the principal of Scape, a small landscape architecture and urban design firm based in Manhattan. And I'm the leader of this tremendous team of other architects, urban designers, landscape architects, high school students, biologists, and community activists. And together we've developed this project called Oystertecture. Well, our goal is really to kind of harness the biological processes and the biological power of the oyster itself to create not only new sort of physical urban fabrics, but also to reconnect New Yorkers with their harbor. So Scape was designated Zone 4, and Zone 4 is a zone that encompasses Red Hook, the Gowanus Canal, Governor's Island, and Buttermilk Channel. The first thing we actually did as a team was to go out to the Bay Ridge Flats, which is this blue area here, with our team members at the Harbor School and the Gowanus Dredgers and Baykeeper and so on. And we were really interested in terms of a strategy of the project to not only just kind of come down from Mars, but, and to sort of do a design project, but really to try to understand what was already happening there. And our project provides basically like an umbrella vision, which kind of incorporates, we think, a lot of those initiatives. When we started thinking about the design of our Zone 4 site, we really started to look to the past to reimagine what the future could be here. And so we researched that the Gowanus was not ever this sort of long, contiguous canal. It was a sort of a network of high salt marshes, reefs, low salt marshes, and kind of gravelly sand beaches. So that was really the inspiration for our reef out at the Bay Ridge Flats, which are out here. The Gowanus actually used to be home to New York's best oysters. Because of its brackish water, it used to have and be known throughout the region for the Gowanus oyster. New York, at a certain point in its history, New York was known as the oyster capital of the world, where today we have hot dog stands. At one point in our history, the oyster cart was as ubiquitous as the New York City hot dog stand. The oyster is this amazing animal that essentially can help us address water quality through its biofiltration processes. It can address storm surge through agglomerating into reef structures and attenuating waves. And it also can address sea level rise in that cleaner water and slower water mean that you can essentially reset your relationship with that water. So we were really inspired by the oyster's life cycle when we were developing this project. And as you can see in this diagram, the oyster can move from a sort of fertilized egg to a free-swimming larvae to a spat to this sort of agglomerated male and female oysters growing in a reef in a matter of weeks. A key insight of our project was that we re-envisioned this oyster life cycle at the scale of our site. So we started to imagine the Gowanus itself as a huge oyster nursery, or flupsy, where spat would be grown, or baby oysters would be grown in the canal, and then paraded down the Gowanus Canal out and then be seeded on the reef. This is sort of this kind of enchanting story, but it's actually also incredibly concrete and real in that these are techniques that are used by oyster farmers, and we have an oyster farmer on our team. And it's really incredible the sort of accelerated growth that you can get. Key to the project is the development of a new kind of Oystertecture at a reef out in the Bay Ridge Flats. And so we've designed essentially a kind of armature or an Oystertecture which consists of piles, a series of marine piles, which is connected by a sort of a woven mesh of fuzzy rope. And this is this amazing kind of product, which is only 99 cents a yard. So we thought maybe we could host a bake sale to get our project started. There's a sort of finer grain mesh to it, and that means that the spat can kind of grab onto it and collect and agglomerate along its length. This fuzzy rope basically is key in terms of providing a structure, and you can see here what it does is provide a sort of secondary floor that oysters can attach to. Often when oysters try to develop at the harbor's floor, they get silted out. So by holding the oysters up above the harbor floor, we give them this incredible opportunity to survive. And that armature basically serves as a kind of a trigger and a collector of oyster spat that develops over time and agglomerates basically into these reef structures, which is pictured here. Not only attenuates waves. As you can see, it works deep in the water column to stop the velocity of waves and to create calmer zones in the harbor, but it also creates this incredible new urban watery landscape, which we're calling the Palisades Bay Regional Park. You can see we've designated navigational channels, diving platforms, and sort of recreational boardwalks and a kind of amphibious pathways that go from water to land to water again. We've built a model of that regional park here, and it's a really exciting matrix that includes animals and people, as you can tell. And here you can see all the different types of programs, recreational programs and science programs that could happen here. Here's a diver underneath one of the dive platforms, providing these sort of shallow shoals where horseshoe crabs could nest or spawn, and also where birds could, migratory birds could nest. So here's an example of animal habitat. This is an osprey nest which rests on top of one of these piles, which is part of this sort of oyster texture structure. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about this amazing invention called the flupsy. A flupsy is really a floating upwelling system, which is essentially like an oyster nursery and a raft at the same time. So you can grow oysters under it, and also it can be occupied by humans. There's a sort of a fan system which draws nutrient-rich water through the system and essentially feeds these baby oysters continuously, while these chambers, one of which you can see here. Here's a flupsy chamber, and you can see the flupsy chamber projects the baby oysters from predators. And again, we imagined the entire Gowanus as a sort of a flupsy. As you know, at the head of the canal is a sort of a huge propeller and a flushing tunnel that forces water from the buttermilk channel through it, in the same way that water is flushed through the flupsy. So this is an image from that boat trip with the harbor school that we took on our first kind of exploratory mission. And you can see here student divers. So these are high school students who have diving certifications. And basically this was sort of a key inspiration for me, because I wanted to design a landscape for them. And because they have such an interesting way of sort of living with and alongside and kind of gardening the harbor, that I really wanted to create a landscape for this generation of New Yorkers, and I wanted to create a landscape for them, sort of a new way of relating to the harbor.